Well, good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good, good. We've allowed probably 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. I've got some questions that I've worked up, obviously, but you'll have plenty of time if you feel we haven't covered anything that you're really wanting to get answered today. But we've got a great panel. I'm excited. We're covering a lot of ground here with this, but they saved the first for first, the best for first, if you would, for this one. I'm going to start with Bob. I mean, you just hit your 4-year anniversary at CISA. You've done time in industry. You've done time. You've done time at DHS, at CBP, at ICE. You've done time in the military. You bring a really good perspective. Everybody I talk to, though, well, not everybody, but from time to time, I'll talk to folks that still don't understand the CISA structure. If you could just spend a little bit of time comparing the CISA programs, which there are quite a few significant programs, with that of your job in OCIO.
Sure. No, absolutely. And Barry, great to be here with you, and big thanks to HSDF. I love doing these events. So yeah, it can appear a little confusing, and maybe even more so since I have kind of a dual role right now. So I'm actually part of the cybersecurity division and the CIO. We kind of did that earlier this year to gain some efficiencies on how we're deploying our IT programs and management of them. So my role is to enable those forward-facing missions to conduct their work. So the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative works with industry and federal partners. They handle our interactions like this week as we're responding to the SharePoint vulnerability. They handle those interactions with industry, as well as getting things out to the federal civilian executive branch agencies to respond to and work with us. A big part of my role now is ensuring that CSD's, the Cybersecurity Division's mission systems are operational. So I'm over the mission engineering group. So the cyber analytic environments, those are all under me now. A lot of our work that we do to collect data from across the FSEB goes through my systems now. So those could be things like our comprehensive log aggregation warehouse, where we take a lot of cloud logs in. And then, you know, my work also centers on making sure that capacity building, that's where the CDM program lives, that program, as it's going through its modernization efforts, deploying into our cloud environments and working very closely with us. And then my role as the CIO is all the fun things that a CIO gets to do, whether it's all the things you never thought you'd sign up for, like the Paperwork Reduction Act or records management. Those are all critical functions that I oversee, but then also making sure that the agency has the right support systems, whether that's HR, business systems, and then we have, over the last 4 years, and really in the last 6 months, work to unify CISA under one unified unclassified environment that we call CISAnet. Weren't super creative there, but it is a pretty creative system. By the name, I mean, it wasn't creative. What we're really working on there is so that the operators don't have to pivot between 3 different workstations to conduct their work. So threat hunters can work on one system, vulnerability management under Sandy Rudetsky can work on one system, and we've collapsed a number of operating environments into one. And that's really enabling our operators to move faster, reduce costs, and give us a different posture on our security landscape at CISA, because it's quite modern. So that's kind of my role in 30 seconds or 2 minutes.
And from a staffing perspective, it's got to be helping with that new model as well, I would think.
I think so. One of the things that it's enabling us to do, and one of the things that I'm really excited about is, you know, my role as a senior leader isn't about being the CIO, it's getting the next generation ready. So now we have these people that are doing IT under one group. I came up through the IT ranks, you know, from an E1 to where I am today, and that's what I really enjoy doing. So I think from a staffing perspective, what it's really allowing us to do is take care of those people in a unified format at the agency and make sure our resources are deployed effectively.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Don, welcome.
Hi.
S&T.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about S&T. You know, I did 2 tours at DHS, and I was always, you know, impressed with what you did for the small amount of staff that you have. Could you just give the audience a feel for where you're at now at S&T, your mission, your goals, just at a very high level?
All right, so as a senior science advisor for cybersecurity, I mean, my #1 goal is to make Bob's job and all these guys' jobs better sometime in the future, but not today though. But we are working on some of the technologies and capabilities that are over the horizon, or some of those harder challenges that they can't solve with tools that we can acquire today, and looking forward to seeing how can we look across the department and see what are some of those fundamental cybersecurity challenges that everyone is having, and how can we take a look at some of the cutting edge science and capabilities that are coming out there so that we can apply that. So this includes looking at, again, everyone's interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning and generative AI capabilities. So we're certainly looking at the impacts there and how we can leverage that both in our development of secure systems, and how we can look at how we can secure these systems that are relying upon these capabilities. Also looking at that in terms of the impacts in critical infrastructure and some of those systems as well. So a lot of our job here now, especially as we re-architect ourselves and look at how can we consolidate and coordinate a lot of the research that we're doing. We're going from basic and foundational research all the way through advanced development and integration and testing and evaluation, and making sure that when our components are looking at either acquiring and deploying cybersecurity systems for their missions, or any system that relies, any digital system that relies on things that need to be secure, that we're helping them do that in an effective manner.
Yeah, yep. Great. Thanks, Don. Todd, welcome.
Thank you.
FBI Cyber Division. So you bring a different perspective here. You're really looking more on the investigative side. But what opportunities or challenges does artificial intelligence present for law enforcement?
That's a great question. So let me frame this response a little bit. So FBI Cyber Division is kind of uniquely focused on a single statute. So it's Title 18 United States Code, Section 1030, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. What we are looking at almost exclusively is computer intrusions. So when I respond for Cyber Division, it's looking at it through the lens of investigating computer intrusions. As Cyber Division has looked at AI, we really looked at it in kind of three buckets. The first bucket being, how are threat actors using AI? How are cyber criminals using AI? What can we do in the furtherance of our investigations with that knowledge? So that's kind of bucket one. What are the bad guys doing? Bucket two is looking at AI vulnerabilities, and that has a couple of different applications. There's the application for opportunities for us to take advantage of potential vulnerabilities as part of our court-authorized operations. But there's also this piece of working with agencies like CISA, where we are educating the public on inherent vulnerabilities present in AI. And then the third piece is where my team is really focused, and that is developing or adopting AI models in a way that benefits our investigative process. So I would say in terms of the question, opportunities or challenges, probably not terribly different than many of you all. We deal with an abundance of data. We get data from our own investigations, data from partners, data from legal process. And we see AI as having the potential to help us be much more efficient in how we're ingesting, processing, normalizing data, how we're using that data for our benefit. So there's a real goal in terms of how we're working with data, where we think AI can have immense application. In terms of challenges with AI, probably a couple. One, with data specifically, much of our data is protected, and there are civil liberty, there are privacy implications with us working with data and AI. So in other words, we can't just point an API at an open source AI model for fear of what will happen with our data. We don't have the ability to protect our data anymore. So there's the data concern, and then other challenges with AI. I think everyone, at least on the panel working in government, will appreciate it's a resource issue. It's a funding issue. If you all have been following the news at all in the past several months, funding is not going up for the government. So trying to be efficient with limited resources, with limited personnel, and how do we prioritize AI efforts with the things that we're currently doing and trying to keep at pace.
Thanks, Todd. Michael, I'm going to stick with that same theme. Your Homeland Security investigations, some similarities here. How would you answer that? What opportunities or challenges does AI present for law enforcement at HSI?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. And as Todd mentioned, he made a lot of great points. HSI and DHS as a whole, but particularly HSI as the investigative arm of the department, sees a lot of the same challenges that the Bureau has, but what we're structured a little bit different. As the senior executive overseeing the Cybercrime Center, it's the DHS Cybercrime Center. We're bringing in multiple agencies, components, and foreign law enforcement counterparts to address a whole host of emergent threats. But first and foremost among those challenges is the use of AI, the illicit use of AI in particular. Shameless plug, I just had an article published in the Sheriffs and Deputy magazines, the National Sheriffs Association, on the specific topic, just the myriad ways that generative AI is being utilized. So what we look at it from a organizational standpoint at HSI is we place all of our cyber resources in one bucket, and there's advantages and disadvantages to doing that. The FBI is structured a little bit differently, and they have those advantages whereas, like Todd mentioned, they're able to focus in on very specific threats. We kind of co-locate our units together under the umbrella of the DHS Cybercrime Center. Each of my operational units broken into the Child Exploitation Investigations Unit, and this is nationally speaking, and internationally because we are a transnational criminal investigative agency. Child Exploitation, our Cybercrime Unit that's focused on darknet investigations, ransomware, network intrusion, fentanyl trafficking on the dark web, et cetera, and our Computer Forensics Unit. All three of those operational units supporting the field are addressing jointly the growing challenge of generative AI. And we're seeing it where illicit threat actors, be it individuals or transnational criminal organizations, are able to now scale up their ability to impact or affect a ransomware event or a network intrusion event. Generative AI being used to facilitate online fraud schemes, where before targeting vulnerable populations like the elderly, for example, was pretty elementary and emanating from places like West Africa and other offshore locations, is now much more sophisticated. And I'm in a room here with some of the brightest folks in the Beltway in the cyber industry. Any of us could be targeted for a financial fraud scheme that is highly sophisticated, powered by generative AI technology that either is using voice mimicking technology, modeling, a fake, Teams call or Zoom call or what have you. We've seen these things happen, particularly in the financial industry and in the private sector. So it's a much more dangerous environment now in that area. Another area, and probably the most disturbing area from our perspective at HSI, is the area of child exploitation and the use of generative AI to create imagery involving the sexual abuse of children. What we're seeing is multiple different ways that individuals and organizations are affecting that by enhancing known images of child exploitation, creating fully generated images of child exploitation, which is a federal offense. And the most disturbing, taking images, innocuous images from social media and other places or out in public, using those images coupled with generative AI technology to create sexually explicit images of unknowing victims. Absolutely tragic. We're focused big time on that right now by finding new ways using and leveraging AI technology to make us more efficient. Give you an example of the scale. In 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported about 6,700 cyber tip lines related to generative AI. In 2024, that jumped to over 67,000, so a tenfold increase. 2025, we anticipate that's absolutely going to skyrocket into the high six figures, if not the low seven figures. That's how ubiquitous this technology is. That's how easy it is to access it. I'm sure everybody here has some form of ChatGPT or other app on their phone. It's not those technologies that are being used to affect this type of really nefarious activity. It's the open source Gen AI technology that's being used by illicit actors, on their own devices. And that's one of the challenges that we have. So we're looking for a lot of help from private industry. We're looking for legislative solutions, but it's an uphill challenge. And I haven't even touched on computer forensics, but I don't want to hog the entire time here.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
Jason, you're our only industry participant here on this panel. Welcome.
Thank you.
But you bring a really good background. You spent over 9 years at CISA, military background. Wanted to get your thoughts from where you sit at MANTECH on GSA's movement right now with FedRAMP 20X. A lot of talk from this administration about efficiencies. And I know we've got some folks here in the room that are very familiar with FedRAMP, that have lived and breathed it, and I know many companies have spent a lot of money and time on it. But I'd like to get your feelings on where that's headed from where you sit, efficiencies, savings, streamlining, risk management around FedRAMP, trust, and so on.
Yeah, thanks for that, Barry, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I think, as Mike just mentioned, and well, everyone on the panel so far, efficiencies are the biggest thing out there lately in the last few months or the last almost year now. And I think using the AI example that everyone has just talked about, I think from the industry standpoint, we're looking for ways that we can force multiply and help do more with less. And I think we're at a great intersection of technology and timing, where we can utilize technology like AI that's somewhat nascent right now in as it pertains to the government and industry. And so I think the industry has a unique perspective on some of these technologies, where a lot of you all who work for some of the industry partners that these folks work with have the ability to use AI or any of these technologies, not only in these gentlemen's focus areas, but also in other areas. So DoD, Intel, and FedCiv. And so we can utilize what we find and what we learn, enhance, adjust, and then work as a trusted partner with folks like the gentleman here on the panel to help bring those efficiencies and force multiply, right? So, you know, we've got to do more with less. And from a FedRAMP perspective, again, I think it's trying to find those areas where we can force multiply, where we can utilize technology to help push forward and meet the goals for that FedRAMP goal. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Jason, I'd like to stay with you.
Okay.
As cyber threats are changing, how are tools changing?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was at CISA for 9 years. I was also in the military for 23, and I am a computer nerd. So I'm still technical. I still go home and type on the keyboard and build things and tear things apart. One of the biggest issues that I have seen in my experience is going to like Black Hat or DEF CON or any of these other cyber conferences that you go to, where you see you walk onto the vendor floor and you see 1,000 different vendors and they're selling 1,000 different things to do 4 things. And when you're in the government, how do you know what to spend your resources on? You're very limited now, resources, right? They were limited before when I worked at CISA, and they're even more so limited now. So when you talk about how do we figure out what tools to use or what is changing, I think as industry, we need to be tool agnostic. I think we need to focus on the technology itself rather than the tooling. I think the tooling always changes. It's the underlying technology. So I think from our perspective, from industry's perspective, and again, I throw my old CISA hat on. When we go in and talk to clients and potential clients and other folks that we're trying to help solve problems with, we listen to their problems, and then we come up with the best solution. And it's not really tied to a vendor product. So for us, to answer your question, for us, it's not really what the product is or who the product comes from, but is the product solving the problem now, and will it continue to solve the problem in the future that we are trying to put on our Nostradamus hats and predict.
Okay, thank you. Michael, I'd like to come back to you. I know you just gave some really good examples, but let's get back to the AI piece. What trends does law enforcement see specific to threat actor or cyber criminal use of AI?
Yeah, and I did kind of touch on it, so I don't want to repeat anything, but I will say that what we are seeing is just a more overall widespread use of the technology, a more comfortability. And I'll give you an example. I mean, you're seeing that criminal organizations and criminal individuals, whether they're in the financial fraud sector, or as I talked about earlier, child exploitation, migrating towards these tools because they're so readily available. In turn, and similar to kind of what Jason just talked about, as government, we've got to be prepared to do that. So again, leading the Cybercrime Center, trying to find those technologies that are going to give us the resources, the ability to efficiently address these issues, identify individuals. This is really probably the largest, from my perspective, and I've got 23 years in federal law enforcement, 24 years almost. One of the biggest tectonic shifts that we've seen in cybercrime and cyber facilitated crime is this just really all of a sudden explosive growth of generative AI and explosive use of it by criminal actors. One of the bigger challenges preceding that would have been the encryption issue, the whole going dark phenomenon, which we're still struggling with to a certain degree. And of course, the creation of the mobile smartphones and being able to carry all that data around on one's person. But this, to me and to my colleagues, not just at HSI, but in other conversations with folks at the Bureau, Secret Service, even state and local law enforcement, the generative AI touching on every aspect of cybercrime, and really any crime for that matter, has become just, so it's not just one trend. As I spoke of earlier, the child exploitation piece there's metrics involved in there that we can point to, but that's really just a kind of representative example of the overall shift for criminal organizations and criminal actors who operate in this space to have migrated to that technology. It's become extremely difficult, and we need those tools to help combat it. And Todd touched on this a little bit. We don't have the luxury, and Jason talked about it as well, we don't have the luxury really of being able to just try anything. As Todd mentioned very astutely, civil liberty concerns, privacy concerns. We have to operate, rightly so, within the framework of the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. So there's some great tools out there that may be available to other components of government that we cannot necessarily, as a federal law enforcement agency, where we have to take things into court and deal with attribution and chain of evidence, chain of custody. And as I mentioned, the constitutional protections afforded everybody, we cannot just, be as aggressive as maybe we would like to. And nor should we. We have to be very measured in our approach, and that creates a challenge because we have to move at a much more, cautious approach than the criminals that we're pursuing.
Right. Thanks, Michael. Mm-hmm. Todd, I'd like that same question answered from the FBI perspective, from where you sit.
Yeah, and I wish I had something new and interesting to say. I think Mike really hit it on the head. Where we're seeing the most prevalence, and again, really strictly focused on computer intrusion investigations, is just use of social engineering, AI to facilitate social engineering, phishing schemes, primarily with criminal intent. But that's where we're seeing it most heavily. I can't imagine what it looks like outside of strictly computer intrusions when we talk about kind of internet-enabled fraud schemes. I have to imagine it's operating at much larger scale. But really, again, just to echo, Mike said it so well, the social engineering aspect of AI is where we're seeing it most.
Okay, thank you. Don, from an operational cybersecurity perspective, what are you looking at long-term over the next 3 to 5 years? And I know it's tough. Sometimes it's tough to even keep track of things over the next 18 months from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, it really is, especially with the rapid kind of growth and capability available to the broader public with these generative AI tools. The next evolution, even beyond what you're familiar with probably now, is using more agentic AI. Tools, and so we're seeing people already research and set up these agents that kind of imbue them with a couple instructions and then let them go forth, but they learn on their own, they start making decisions on their own, they grow and evolve in ways that you won't necessarily predict or understand. And I think this is the area that we're looking into now to see how can we prepare and how can we get ahead of that. And you talked about the growth of even some of these social engineering attacks. I mean, what do you do when people can, right now, these tools already allow you to like set up mass campaigns and implement them, but what do you do now when you can set an agent up and it can keep going off and it can evolve and it can identify who it wants to target, and then it can tailor its message to them and even identify larger societal goals. So this is a very interesting and challenging space. We're seeing the reasoning capability and the amount of like memory and space that these things can hold and take on larger time frame like objectives and move without human interference and action is going to be even a harder challenge for us to deal with going forward.
Sticking along the same lines, but a different topic is quantum computing. Are you all giving some time and thought to that? I know I was out at the Consumer Electronics Show back in January, and Jensen Huang at his keynote talked about quantum being at least 15 years out. And then recently, in the last 3 months, he's backtracked.
Yeah,
he's now saying that's more like a 2 to 3 year time period.
Yeah, we kind of see those dates shift and continue to come closer and closer. And so, yeah, we're looking at that. We're kind of working hand in hand with our partners in CISA as well, because we're both doing kind of the inventory of our current assets and trying to make sure that they're on point doing that stuff, but also thinking ahead of how do we implement some of these post-quantum resilient algorithms. How are they going to affect our operation, not only on our traditional IT systems, but one of those challenging areas of all this operational technology that's within our critical infrastructure. How do we poise and enable our partners to set up their systems so that they can transition smoothly and start being resilient to some of those impending threats that are coming?
Yep. Thanks, Don. Back to you, Bob. Every CIO job that I took, I was always amazed at how much software was there regarding cybersecurity tools. Every location I went into had a ton of tools. How are you looking at things from, an interoperability and the governance process around tools? Can you speak to how you've handled this challenge at CISA?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of people in the room that work with me, and I always chafe at the word governance when it comes to my job for certain things. So I think there's certain aspects you have to take as a CIO, and the first and foremost, you have to understand the mission and your operators and what they're doing. Every agency is different. Every critical infrastructure operator might be different. So wherever you sit in that IT kind of org chart, you have to understand what's occurring in your organization, like types of data in use, the types of technologies, what the mission is. So at CISA, like I have a really fun role. It's like great being the CIO at the cybersecurity agency because I have a whole team of people that are helping me on the mission side, and they're really good and they're really amazing. So my role is different than it was at Customs and Border Protection or Immigration and Customs Enforcement when I was there a long time ago. But designing systems, one of our primary things was officer and agent safety. We talked about it a bit, chain of custody. Do these systems, are they reliant? Can we rely on them in court? And I have some of that at CISA, but first and foremost, I need to bring in the cybersecurity division as part of our designs. And that's why CISANet was so successful. Some of the best minds in government were helping us build it. In industry as well. We had a really strong partnership with all our vendors through that process. I think when you're looking at tools, it's, I agree. I can go to these conferences and it's like, wow, I am so tired by day one from 1,000 tools solving different problems. You have to identify what problem you are trying to solve. And there are often different challenges across the board when you're looking at things. Say at CBP, I could deploy those great agents, but if it slows down travel processing, that's going to be another problem that we have to look at. Or if Border Patrol's mission is impacted because I'm sucking down all the bandwidth and they're out in a very remote region trying to affect the mission. So I think it's understanding what problem you're trying to solve and then taking having either a very defined or even just a gut check on what is the risk. Am I spending a lot of time, money, effort, and people resources to defend and secure something, and the only thing on it is data that's publicly available or could be publicly available? And that maybe is the right answer, probably is not the right answer. So what are your crown jewels? What data are you trying to protect? And then what are the resources that you have available? One of the advantages I had at CISA when I started 4 years ago, there wasn't a lot of infrastructure built in the CIO's office. There wasn't much there. So I was able to greenfield technologies. I was able to build my staff up in a different way. And that was super exciting to be able to build a team from the ground up. Not every place has that. So you couldn't take the lessons I learned there and apply them elsewhere. I think one of the things that CISA is really concentrating on is, particularly how we work with the federal civilian executive branch agencies. I think years ago, CDM was very prescriptive. You're going to use this tool. You're going to go with this tool. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love us. There's going to be no problems. And then you're hearing from CIOs and CISOs, wow, like nothing's working. Yeah, I can't meet your goals. I can't meet my goals. I was one of those people at another agency, this isn't working. So we took a different perspective. And what I'm really excited for now in my role, whether it's our work on, the CLAW or aggregation warehouse for logs, persistent access to have sub-agencies with our hunt capabilities, we are less saying utilize tool from vendor X and more there's a suite of tools that meet our requirements, what works best for you. And where I'm really concentrating in my CIO role is I have to be able to accept data into CISA's environments from any vendor. I would love every vendor to normalize things, and it would be awesome and amazing. It's not going to happen in short order. So I have to be able to accept what's coming into us and then normalize that on my side. So I want to really lower the barrier for interfacing with CISA, and that's something that I'm super excited about, that I've really just seen a lot in the last 90 days or so as we kind of migrate to our modernized environments, that I think it's going to make it a lot easier for industry and our federal and SLTT partners to interface with us.
Excellent. Let's shift gears, Bob. Stay with you. Zero trust continues to be a big buzzword, obviously, and there's no one security company that can address all the pillars that make up zero trust. But from a cyber perspective, how have you seen it evolving, especially over the past year? First question. And then what is the one thing industry still misses when supporting zero trust or AI assurance or threat intel modernization?
Oh, wow. Well, those were three very different ending statements.
Yes.
So I think I'll tackle zero trust. Buzzwords, it is what it is. I think that we have to change our thinking around incident response, incident management, which is different than when you're responding to it, and maybe the preparation to it, and just how we react to it. You have to change in your head that you're going to wake up every morning. Maybe we got compromised. Maybe it happened. I don't know. We had a major incident a year and a ago at CISA on one of our systems, and I think what was really refreshing was across leadership. It wasn't where did the IT team screw up. It was how do we respond? How do we react? How do we support you? How do we get better from that? And I think that's really all part of it. I think when we talk about zero trust, I think first and foremost, whether it's the CISA zero trust maturity model or DoD's model, it starts with identity. If you don't know what and who is on your network, then you can't even talk about zero trust. And I think that's something that we really concentrated on when we built our new environments. Whether you're a state, local, territorial, tribal government that's working with us on our cyber hygiene resources or some of our infrastructure programs, we know who you are when you access our systems. We know how to work with you. We know what you should have access to. And we know that for our employees now too at a very deep level. And you have to start assigning risk scores to what's on your network and who's operating on it. But I think really first and foremost, it's changing our thought process on what happens during an incident. You have to still have plans. You have to make sure your teams get burnt out. I think all of us lived through SolarWinds and probably saw people 6 months later that looked 5 years older. That's not the right answer. And it happens no matter where you are. I've been through many different responses. I was on the ground for the response in New York City to Hurricane Sandy. Like, I was out there every day for 45 days, 18-hour shifts, living in an RV at the port of Newark, New Jersey, but I was in Newark. And it changes you. You're tired afterwards. It takes you 6 months to stop getting sick all the time. That happens in our IT world, in our cyber world. So you have to build up resiliency and resources. And I think one of the things I'm most excited about now, as we see the changes in contracting models and the ability to have these really hard discussions about being able to work with our vendor community for surge capacity. When are we tapped out? I need to be able to have an executable CLIN right away, bring in resources, surge in and out. And also, this is a perennial problem of human nature. What's important right now, what's important to who, and how do I respond to it? Often, I think we get that wrong, and I don't know how you get that better except through lots of training. It's something I think the military trains up and gets right. Like, you can't always be hitting your people 5 minutes for an update on everything. But what I really am trying to concentrate on is how do I build up resiliency in my workforce. And when we talk about industry, I think many in industry know I'm a hard customer, but I'll also be a great partner to you. I'll take that meeting with you, I'll sit down with you, I'll listen to you. I may tell you exactly what I think, but we are absolutely permitted on the government side to have hard conversations, and we shouldn't fear from them. And I think what I always ask my industry partners, tell me where I'm failing, tell me when my organization is maybe making it difficult for you to be successful. That doesn't mean throwing people under the bus. It means having these hard bilateral conversations so that we're both successful. And that's something that I'm firmly committed to in my work with industry.
Great answer. Thanks, Bob.
Of course.
Let's shift gears. Jason, I know you are currently supporting several DHS components. What are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges in supporting them, and how are you working with government to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Barry. I think I'm going to jump on to what Bob just said. I think some of the challenges that we have there, and Bob just said it, like being able to have those frank discussions with our clients, being able to gain access and listen, when I worked at CISA, I couldn't stand having vendors come in to sell me something I didn't ask for. We all work against this cyber threat, right? So we should know what the problems already are. Yeah. So I think with us, we try to identify those problems before we have those conversations with folks like Bob. And then again, becoming part of that trusted advisor role and listen, folks like Bob and all these guys up here, they know when we come in and we know what we're talking about and when we don't. So I enjoy having those frank discussions, right? And it gets to the point of problem solving better. So I would say one of the challenges for us or for industry is making sure that we focus on the right topics to talk about, making sure that we have our finger on the real pulse of what's going on so that when we do get the opportunity to have those discussions, we're talking about the problems that we all know. And so that the solutions we bring, you either know they'll work or they won't. And I think that's where I'll end it. Yeah.
Sticking with you, Jason, this administration, as I said earlier, is really focused on efficiencies and effectiveness. What changes and improvements have you witnessed from supporting the government clients, specifically over the last 6 months? Anything that you can share that you feel comfortable with?
No, actually. We'll just get that one out of the way. No, I think we all started talking about AI, and I think from everyone up here on the panel's perspective, it's, they have a very difficult role in bringing something in that some people on this panel have said is, it's a resource thing or it's a technology thing. Like, I don't have the time and effort to do things that I can't either by law or timing or resourcing. I think that's where industry is really where we can kind of force multiplier, meet those efficiencies, right? Like I said before, a lot of us in the industry have different clients, different customer sets. And so what we see in one area of that client set, we can take and twist and mold and bring to bear for unique challenges that someone else in a different area might face, right? So for instance, one of our customers, we have a product called Code Assist. Not that I'm trying to sell anything today, hint, hint, but we're utilizing AI to help take old code and refactor it into new code. But before, if you were using Fortran or Cobalt or any of those old technologies, you would need an older technology guy like myself, right? So now we can take AI, utilize that to help force multiply and get that done in a much more efficient and quicker manner than before. So to sum that up, I think one of the challenges is making sure that we have that access to clients and folks, but that when we do get that access, that we're bringing the right messaging to bear.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. Michael, how does federal law enforcement work with the private sector? First question. And then right along those same lines, how can the private sector support law enforcement mission?
Yeah, that's great. And Jason touched on some of that, especially in this field, which is so fluid, as we all know in this room. Federal law enforcement is inherently bureaucratic, hierarchical. We rely and need the nimbleness and the agility of the private sector. Now at HSI, we pride ourselves on, for a federal law enforcement agency anyways, of roughly 7,000 special agents, being fairly nimble and agile, but we're still a government organization. The private sector has the ability to look and do long-term investment, research and development. Fortunately, we do have S&T at DHS, but from the majority of our agents in our workforce, they're not looking at the emergent threats on the horizon because they're too busy dealing with the threats in front of them. In many cases, actual threats, right? Mm-hmm. Criminal caseloads, investigations, TDYs, details, things like that, supplementing other agencies, partnering on task forces, et cetera. There's a small cadre of us at headquarters, senior leaders, whose job it is to look a little bit more forward-facing or forward-looking rather, but we're reliant on the private sector and the expertise that's contained here in this room. To Jason's point, yes, I get inundated, like many of my colleagues. I'm sure Todd does as well, with vendors trying to sell, and we get that. There's a relationship there. We're not looking for a real, and I'm speaking from the Cybercrime Center, not looking for a kind of vendor-customer relationship. We're looking for a partnership. We're looking for a long-term commitment on things that we believe will ultimately help the operators, the investigators, special agents in the field. And I think there's sometimes some misunderstanding, understandably so, that, Mike Prado leads the Cybercrime Center, so they conflate me with the CIO. I'm not the CIO. I'm not looking for enterprise solutions for IT things of that nature. I'm looking for operational tools, technologies that are going to help further advance active investigations or future investigations. So I think it's one of those symbiotic relationships that one can't be successful without the other. We absolutely need the expertise of the private sector.
Thanks, Michael. Todd, same question for you. And I know FBI has some really good industry FBI programs out there. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So I agree with everything that Mike said. We absolutely need industry. And I'll approach this question from a little different perspective. The reality is that there is no solution where federal law enforcement, FBI, HSI, or others are able to indict or arrest our way out of computer intrusions. There's no way that we're going to arrest or indict our way towards a safe and secure cyber ecosystem. So we absolutely need the partnership of industry. We need to have a collaborative dynamic where we will respond to computer intrusions. We'll share threat intelligence, including intelligence that is from our own holdings, but we need industry's cooperation as well. We run into this issue commonly as we're responding to computer intrusion cases where there is an openness to share, but there are industry concerns that we're going to provide information to regulators, or we're going to put your information out in the media. So, we need to establish relationships with industry just to kind of break down barriers and dissolve myths on what we will and won't do as part of our response. But in order to create an ecosystem, in order to help defend against the next victim, we need cooperation from industry. Fully understand that it's easy to say and it's a complicated dynamic. There are privacy concerns on industry side as well. We will absolutely work with industry partners to kind of walk through those things. Every FBI field office has a private sector coordinator whose sole job it is to engage industry partners in that community and help to overcome some of these misunderstandings, help to establish relationships. We have personnel at dedicated headquarters as well that serve that same function. So I think the big message that I would like to relay anytime we have the opportunity to talk about partnership with the industry is we absolutely need your partnership. Help establish that relationship with the FBI, and let's figure out how we can get through some of the hurdles that prevent us from sharing on both sides.
Oh, great. Thanks. Don, I know S&T is unique in certain ways from a procurement standpoint, and I know they continuously welcome technological proposals to solve Homeland Security problems.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that effort?
Absolutely. I think it's an exciting opportunity whenever we get inquiries and questions from our industry partners. We have a range of innovation programs and opportunities to partner with industry, both from in terms of actually helping us conduct some of that foundational and applied research, but also to help do some of the kind of rapid innovation and application to current operational challenges that we can help facilitate transitions into components for use in missions currently. So we have a wide variety of ways of coming in through our innovation team, and we look at different paths that we have depending on whether it's a small business, whether it's a large traditional business. There's all types of different ways that we bring that in. A lot of spent a lot of time working with like academicians and scientists and lab folks. So one of the things that industry also helps us do is kind of bring that back to reality of, all right, but how can we commercialize this? Or if we got the fundamental algorithm and approach down, how do we then integrate that into commercial systems and productize them so that they can be used in some of these missions that these folks are using on a daily basis?
All right. And then to end up there, Donald, what would you say to the folks here in the audience? How can they work better with S&T? Any advice, closing words for them?
Well, one, just bear with us as we're all, it's still a government agency and we have even fewer people to field all of the inquiries now. So we're still certainly increasing our efficiency and ability to identify those opportunities. I say continue to be patient and continue to make sure that when you talk to us, look at the problems that we're trying to solve, not only the current problems that you see with some of our operational partners, but think of we put out these long-range BAAs and announcements that tell you where we think the technology is going, where the science challenges that we're trying to solve are. So when you do reach out to us, try to be a little bit cognizant of what we think those big challenges are, but also come to us. As soon as I talk to someone, a lot of times I have to remind them saying, I'm not the CIO, I'm not buying enterprise IT stuff for you, but let me talk to your internal R&D team. What is your long-term roadmap? What are those challenges that you're seeing that has kind of been nagging, but you can't get a current customer to bite on, but you really do think is important for the future? Come with those kind of fresh ideas for us, and we love to work with folks in that space.
Excellent. Thanks, Don. Bob, I'll close with you on that same question.
Well, I think one of the most important things is know your customer. You can't sell or work with every customer the same. And I think that's really important. Like for me, anyone that walks in with a meeting with me and says, Bob, tell me your priorities. Just Google me.
Or what keeps you up at night.
Or what keeps you up at night. Caffeine. So I think that, one of the most important things is know the drivers of the organization and the mission. One of the things that in my prior roles at the department that always concerned me, I would have a new company come in and want to work with us. And I'm like, you don't understand the mission. I cannot put officer or agent safety on something that's in a beta program. or isn't out there yet. I need defined solutions that work and are stable. I have a lot more freedom right now to test different things. And I would say for like already established relationships, help us make sure that we're fully enabled or to the highest level possible in the products we buy. There's nothing worse than, you know, and I did it too when I got to be an engineer and do fun things. Oh, I gotta have this thing, and then you're using 20% of it or it sits there. Help us get to a high enablement level and help us stay current. You know, one of the most exciting things right now as we consume more and more, you know, SaaS offerings and kind of solutions where you're pushing product updates quite frequently. Don't let us fall behind. You know, there's nothing worse than, you know, I was at another government agency the other week. I'm like, boy, your collaboration suite looks like really like 8 revisions behind. They're like, oh yeah, Bob, we're at like N-32. And I'm like, wow, that's awful. Yeah, you know, help us kind of work together. And I would just really say too, like it is always like at Homeland Security, our mission is to defend the homeland. Like I was not there at the start of DHS. I was wearing a different uniform at the time. You know, keep that first and foremost when you're working with us. We are trying to do amazing things to make sure everyone's safe. Travel processing, commerce, like it's a very broad mission set, and it's super exciting. And often, when you're talking to one of us in the CIOs, you're talking to all of us. We have a very tight community. The new DHS CIO is unifying that in a really wonderful way. And I think that, you know, if we can help each other, we will. And that's one thing that I really love when vendors see us as one, but also individuals within that group with different mission sets.
Awesome. Great feedback. We have about 12 minutes for questions. So I think we have a mic, 2 mics actually. So if you could just raise your hand, say your name and the company that you're with. And you've got to have questions for this esteemed group. We've got one right over here, second row.
Hi.
Dead battery.
I was in the Army, I can just yell at you. And one of the things that we're very interested in is how CISA and the other agencies are looking at operational technology. We do a lot of work in the Volt Typhoon, Silk Typhoon, anything with the word typhoon in it. Apparently is coming after our major infrastructure. And so it'd be interesting how you all look at innovative solutions for operational technology, cybersecurity.
It's a wonderful question, and we certainly thank you and many other manufacturers of OT for the partnership. Like you're all working with us very closely. I think one of the first areas on that is, even before you look at the technology, is the education of where these products are utilized. And one of the areas that I think we all recognize is, and I didn't, well, maybe we don't, because I didn't before I got to CISA. I didn't know that most of the critical infrastructure in this country is privately owned. We don't have a national water system, electrical system. We don't even have standards that enforce that. We do in some areas, but not in totality. So I think a big part of our job, and we are in all 50 states, is working with those either companies or municipal organizations to understand the risk and help them secure them. Sometimes more modern OT devices do have some security capabilities, but we also know that these have very, very long life cycles. I worked a lot in land mobile radio, both at ICE and CBP. You buy a radio system, you're not replacing it in a year. You know, it has a very, very long life cycle. We all had bricks on our belts at one time. OT can be very similar, and it also serves a very critical function. You change a valve, you could contaminate a water supply, you could kill people. And I think that's getting that education out there. I think the other area that we're concentrating on is, you know, increasing our partnerships through JCD and others, JCDC and other formats that we have to get more OT companies in there, whether it's also on the defense side too. How do you defend OT? How do you detect issues? And then how do you secure it?
Yeah, I think part of that is again, helping us get a better sense of how you're building these systems. How can we get better assurance that we're building them with security in mind? How can we ascertain when something comes up? How quickly can we figure out what types of firmware is in there, what type of open source software is in there across this infrastructure, so that we can quickly identify where some of those risk points are and start to ameliorate and address them. Also looking at how can, again, these things often have to have 100% uptime, and you can't really just take them down and install updates on them. So thinking about how can we test out on using digital twins and other methods to really understand what's inside of these things, what potential updates and changes will happen, and how can we quickly restore them if something goes down? How do we make those systems more resilient? So that's one of the areas that we're very interested in as well.
Any other thoughts from the panel on that? Okay, let's shift. We had a question over here.
Thank you, HTSF. Thank you for this panel. Thank you to all the panel members. Sudha Venkateshwaran, Alpha Omega. I've heard, and maybe it's not true, that AI from outside is not permitted to be used, at least in certain organizations. And we heard some of the panel members talk about how they're leveraging AI. Can we please explain, maybe Mike or maybe Bob, you can talk about whether you are using AI or AI is allowed to be used?
Yeah, I can address at least in part on that, and then maybe defer to Todd, and maybe the FBI has a different perspective. From a DHS, in particular HSI, as a federal law enforcement agency, even though the executive orders were kind of lifted in January that really placed a lot stricter regulation and prohibition on what we can and could not use, we are still proceeding in a relatively cautious manner for some of the reasons I outlined earlier, as it relates to civil liberties, as it relates to making sure that we're not unleashing something on the public that we don't have control of, right, or fully yet understand. At the same time, and I know Todd touched on this as well, we have to be very careful with the data, because the data that we have is extremely sensitive beyond just regular PII. It's criminal investigative data, it's sources and methods, it's undercover operations, et cetera, that we have to be careful how we apply AI to help enhance efficiencies does not result in any sort of spillage or breach of our data. So what we have done within our cyber and operational technology division, where our cybercrime center resides, is we have invested significantly internally with AI. S&T has helped us to a large degree in that. We've come up with some internal solutions, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we still require private sector assistance. And I think we're proceeding in that cautious approach that's allowing us to look, and a lot of your platforms that, and I know many of you because I've had conversations with some of you in person or over the phone, have AI enhancements or at least touch upon AI tools. And so we are still looking at those, and we're willing to take those on, but we have to do it in a measured response for the reasons I outlined.
Yeah, and a very similar response. We historically have viewed use of AI strictly through data protection. So while we were theoretically permitted to use AI, it became overly restrictive to do so. Those policies are now changing. We love AI. We want to be able to use it, but we have to use it responsibly.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, right here in the front. Got a mic coming.
Hi, David Crawford, CGI. This question's for Bob. Following up on Barry's question about zero trust. What do you think industry needs to be doing to help the FCEB in terms of some of the potential gaps in the pillars right now? You mentioned identity. I strongly agree with that, but then you got to pivot.
Yeah, so the FSEB's huge. It's a gigantic enterprise, as we all know. 100 agencies. We're not talking about 10 endpoints. Millions of users. millions of different connections and data points and various missions. So I think it does come back to industry understanding their customer and how to help them get through and where they're at. One of the interesting things that I find at CISA is the scope of agencies that we work with. You work with some very, very large FSEB, Veterans Affairs, second largest federal agency outside the Department of Defense. It's huge, it's gigantic, quite capable. Department of State, very, very capable too. And then we work with very, very small micro agencies, small agencies. Honestly, CISA's enterprise, we're very nimble for our size, but I don't have 65,000 people like I had at CBP. I think if I was a CIO at an equivalent size agency out there in the FSEB, I wouldn't be running IT like I run it here. I'd be looking for managed service providers. I'd be looking for help from others. And I think that's changing. I think we have to change how we help the FSEB and work with them and then train up the federal workforce to take on these roles, and every agency will be a little bit different. I don't think zero trust at an agency with 100 people is the same as zero trust at an agency with 65,000. And I do think some agencies, we absolutely believe I work with all vendors. Some agencies might be more one vendor than other agencies. No one can maintain a tech stack of 20 different major items at a small agency, and we shouldn't expect them to, because it gets hard even at the larger agencies. So I think where we need to work together is defining good tech stacks and then maintaining them. And then I think the other thing that we've heard here too, we all have a lot of projects, programs. We have our mission work that's ongoing that can't stop. You need to know when to pull the plug. And I think that's on both sides too. I think sometimes we buy a solution and no one wants to say it's not working. We need to all get better and say, you know what, this isn't gonna work in your environment. We want to remain a good partner. We suggest disconnecting. And I was a network engineer, so I was always just going circuits. So I think that's where the partnership comes. And I always say it's a very big pond here in the United States. There's one for every company and every mission. Sometimes a product just won't work. And we spend years trying to make projects work, and it's up to us to work together to say it's no longer effective. And sometimes I think on the industry side, it may not be cost effective, and that may not be driving the bottom line if you keep resourcing things that we all know maybe are just not going in the direction that we need.
Yep. Time for one more question before we hit the break. Any more questions?
I got one.
All right, Lou.
Let's talk about procurement. There's a lot of new activity, going on with procurement policy direction out of GSA, combining, mandating, or highly suggesting, et cetera. Meanwhile, you all have lost a lot of talent in the building. Just want to get some thoughts. Maybe I'll pick on Bob, but I'd like to talk to HSI and FBI as well, just to get some thoughts about, are you excited about some of this direction? Are you using some of these new techniques, OTAs, CSOPs, et cetera, to get at some of this technology and buy it in a more modern way than you've bought it in the past?
Well, I think some of that work, S&T at DHS would be great to answer. I think, where I'm at right now, besides being up here on the stage, I'm excited for potential changes, and I think I had a lot of training. I worked for you for a long period of time, Luke, and a CIO cannot be effective if you don't have a partnership with your procurement office and acquisition office. So I think the way I'm approaching things right now, like I talk to our chief of contracting operations, probably in the morning and the night, because every procurement at CISA goes through me in some fashion for a technology review. And I think that's what I'm excited for, that we're driving towards is better partnerships. And I think, we want federal agencies to be concentrating on their mission that they're authorized for. And I can't concentrate on that cyber mission if 80% of my time is spent on contracting and trying to buy what I know that I need. So if we can get to a better place where this moves faster and we can enable the operators to get what they need faster, I think all of us on the stage would really applaud that.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in. I don't have much to add. I would say we have the immense luxury of having a procurement office that we work with. So many of those questions get deferred to them. Not really my area of expertise. I'm sad to be losing people in positions, and obviously any efficiencies we can find in those losses are great, but candidly, that happens at another division.
How about us?
Yeah, so S&T, we've historically enjoyed broad flexibility on how we can work with different innovative procurement vehicles and options, and we're continuing to evaluate how can we maintain and expand that flexibility in order to support our partners. Some of that goes into being kind of a petri dish and a test bed for some nascent technologies and doing some of the steps that are going to satisfy some of the procurement questions that you're going to have as you're trying to turn into an acquisition program. So trying to check a lot of those boxes in terms of understanding some of the risks and some of the just the typical questions that you go through as you're trying to stand up and move through a procurement process. We can help the components do that a little bit quicker. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, Jason.
Not that I really have a play in this part, but what I will say is you mentioned GSA and the way they're trying to move towards. We have a vehicle now that answers all of those questions, right? So how can we do things more flexible, more quickly, and from a cyber perspective? And I not sounding like a commercial, we have a vehicle called ICON that allows for DCO, OCO, mission systems, threat intelligence, all of those things that allow you to do one at a time. I think from my perspective, my time at CISA, one of my biggest concern was I worked in VM, which is now Sandy Radesky's area, doing a lot of their red teaming and penetration testing and cyber hygiene. And I remember at the time we were looking to get a contract vehicle in that we could get many different operators on at the time. And if any of you are familiar with that area, getting good penetration testing, red teaming folks is difficult, especially cleared ones, and especially at the time into DHS or CISA through their clearance process. And so my concern was, hey, I'm going to get stuck with this for 5 years. And if these guys aren't good, I'm stuck, right? And that's not the way that we want to go about it. And so I think one of the vehicles that we have, that vehicle I spoke of, ICON, has the ability to be flexible at 1 year increments. And we assign to you what we call, and it's a manager. We assign a manager to you, a partner with you, so that as that year is unfolding, we're working with you to refine those requirements. And if you don't like them, we're adjusting them as we go. And we've got 66 partners right now that are part of this that, they're vendors, right? They all want a piece. But the way that we look at it is we listen to you, we find out what you guys need, any of you, the rest of you that are here, and we marry you up with the right technology and the right answers and give you the ability to adjust as we're going. And that's what I wish I had back when I was at CISA. So from the industry perspective, we're starting to use some of those, and I think they're working.
Great. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.